I recently put up a Twitter poll asking which British bands other than Oasis I should do a feature on, and the Beatles were the clear winners. Of course, I missed the 60s and Beatlemania, but growing up in the 90s was awesome, not only because I got to experience Britpop, but also because I was lucky enough to be alive for 2 brand new original singles from the Beatles as well. In 1995, the Beatles released their first new original single in decades, and it was this, a song called Free as a Bird. It was made as part of this CD set, the Beatles Anthology Part 1, which was a companion to this, the full Beatles Anthology documentary. I always loved the song, even though it got the predictable panning in the UK press. According to Wikipedia, The Guardian called it a publicity gimmick, The Independent called it a dirge, and Revolution in the Head called it dreary. The song actually ended up winning a Grammy, and I think it's fair to say that despite the predictable reviews at the time, it really has stood the test of time and now stands out as a 90s classic. So today I want to talk you through a brief history of the song, I want to look at its fascinating double meaning, and I want to show you one of the strangest and most difficult to explain Easter eggs I've ever found in a Beatles song before. The track was put together by Paul, George, Ringo and this man, Jeff Lynne. Jeff is the Brummy musical genius behind Electric Light Orchestra, ELO. ELO are well known as being heavily influenced by the Beatles, to the point that one of the Beatles, Ringo I think, told a joke that ran, "Why did ELO split up? Because they ran out of Beatles riffs." However, there doesn't seem to have been any actual bad blood between the two bands, because George Harrison used Jeff as his producer on some of his solo work, and the Beatles chose to work with Jeff in creating Free as a Bird. The origins of this song becoming a Beatles song lie in the Anthology project. In January 1994, Paul McCartney was in New York for the Beatles' induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and while there, Yoko Ono handed over some cassette recordings that John Lennon had made before his death of largely unreleased demos. And according to the sleeve notes of the Beatles' 1+ Blu-ray set, that was the moment when they finally decided to reunite on record, because they realised they could do so with John on the recording. Free as a Bird was originally actually an unfinished demo, and so the band did that song first because they were able to write part of the song, they were able to finish it for John, and so it was a genuine Beatles co-write and performance. But what does the song actually mean? This one's particularly interesting to me because of when it was written. All sources agree John's unfinished demo was recorded sometime in 1977 in New York in the Dakota Building. The original demo is very sparse and quite sweet. It's literally just Lennon singing and playing the piano into a ropey old cassette recorder. And the unfinished version that John left has just a few short lines of lyrics. Here's what John wrote: "Free as a bird, it's the next best thing to be, free as a bird. Home, home and dry, like a homing bird I'll fly, as a bird on wings. Whatever happened to the life that we once knew?" And those few short lines are the entirety of the words that John wrote. But what was he writing about? Of course, we can never know for sure, but what we can do is take a look at his life and draw some possible conclusions. We can examine his life in 1977 and make a few educated guesses. I'd like to read to you from this article on the last 5 years of Lennon's life, that's 1975 to 1980. In the last 5 years of his life, Lennon went into hibernation. He retreated into a domestic idyll inside the famed Dakota apartment building in New York City, devoting himself to raising his young son, Sean, and nurturing his strained marriage with his wife, Yoko Ono. He was so alive, and he felt that he had something important to say about raising his baby and marriage. In the fall of 1980, the Los Angeles Times asked Lennon to reflect on his decision to leave professional recording behind. He answered that he realised he had stopped making records for me anymore and ceded too much of himself to record companies. Finally, Yoko said, "You don't have to do it anymore." "I was shocked," he said. "I had never thought that. Could the world get along without another John Lennon album? Could I get along without it?" I finally realised that the answer to both questions was yes. In the time from the fall of 1976 and his murder in 1980, Lennon threw himself into the simple, small-scale rituals of fatherhood. He took primary responsibility for Sean, walking him through Central Park, baking bread, and called himself a house husband. Ono, meanwhile, managed the family's sprawling business portfolio. Nearly all contemporaneous stories depict Lennon as a steadfast and joyful father, totally consumed with domestic life. So it was here, right smack bang in the middle of his 5-year phase as a house husband, 1977, that Lennon wrote these lyrics. And we see 2 references to being at home in the lyrics of Free as a Bird. Home and dry, and like a homing bird I fly. This song, in its original demo form, seems to me at least to be most likely about Lennon's time as a house husband and his joy at being a father to Sean. Being home, having no expectations on him, no pressure, no deadlines, no demands to write and release music anymore, made him feel free. He was happy to just be at home and to be a dad. And so I personally feel that that is the most likely meaning of Lennon's words in the original demo. But now let's scroll forward from 1977 to 1994. Paul, George and Ringo had Lennon's unfinished demo with gaps and hummed passages, and they added some more lyrics. And the words they added created an extra layer and a second meaning to the song. When John originally sang "Whatever Happened to the Life That We Once Knew," I assume he was probably talking about his previous life working in the record industry, which was then on pause for many years. When the other Beatles finished the song, however, the only lyrics they added were to the bridge, which now goes like this: "Whatever happened to the life that we once knew? Can we really live without each other? Where did we lose the touch that seemed to mean so much? It always made me feel so free." And so, with these new words, the meaning of the song is changed just a little bit. It now reads like a retrospective view on their old bandmate. It now seems to be looking at the sad falling out between McCartney and Lennon, the collapse of the Beatles, and the splintering of those friendships. Whereas in the original song, Lennon was saying he felt at home and where he was meant to be, raising his little son, the Beatles were saying they felt at home, they felt where they were meant to be, when the 4 of them were all together. The new line, "Can we really live without each other?" shows that the rest of the band were thinking about having lost John and wondering how they're meant to go on without him. And then when you look at the verses in light of this new meaning, they change from being John singing about home life and become about John now being truly free, not just from the music industry, but from the troubles of this world. He's now free, he's now home and dry, in his forever home, wherever that may be. What a genuinely beautiful and moving way to reinterpret this song by Paul, George and Ringo. But that's not all. This track also contains a little moment of real life, actual John Lennon magic. Because if you listen to the original mix of this song on the anthology CD or on the single, you can hear right at the end, buried in amongst George's ukulele playing, there is a vocal clip of John Lennon saying, "Made with John Lennon." However, 20 years later, in 2015, the Beatles released this with an updated mix. And in this new version, in this cleaned up and restored mix of Free as a Bird, this time they play that little vocal clip from John Lennon the other way around. And this time it says, "Turned out nice again, didn't it?" This is the exact same audio clip. One way round it says made by John Lennon, the other way around it says turned out nice again, didn't it? How the hell have they done that? Consider my mind officially blown. You can hear both versions of the song online. The 1995 mix is on Spotify and the 2015 mix is on the music video on YouTube. But just in case you doubt me on that pretty much unexplainable bit of backmasking, here is the 1995 clip forwards and backwards, and here is the 2015 clip forwards and backwards.
John Lennon. Turned out nice again. Turned out nice again. John Lennon.
So you can hear that is the exact same clip and it works both forwards and backwards. Absolutely mental. There was also another Beatles single in the 90s. The second one was called Real Love, but this one was already a finished song written by John, so despite it being a beautiful masterpiece of a song, the other Beatles didn't enjoy it quite as much because they weren't able to make it a co-write. However, to my mind, that doesn't matter at all because so much of their 60s output was actually only written by one Beatle anyway. And excitingly, the third and final one is coming out soon, believed to be a song called Now and Then. This is a song that the band originally also worked on in 1994, but it ended up getting vetoed because George didn't really like it. Now we don't know for sure what the song is yet, but Now and Then is the strongest contender so far. And that's awesome because if you're younger than me, that means that you too get to live through a brand new original Beatles release. And that's it for this video on Free as a Bird. But have I missed anything? Do you have a different interpretation of the song, or are there any other Easter eggs in the song that I might have missed? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, I'll see you next time.